2020 finally comes to an end as Disney, Sony, and Warner Media all look to the future with content announcements galore. I'm Joe Acierno.
And I'm Darius Delsoin. This is Cinema Unchained. Welcome back from the intro, guys, and in this episode we'll be discussing a bit more about our top 5 or top 10 best and worst films of 2020. Let's face it, 2020 was not a great year for many, so that will be one of the things that we'll be discussing. Another will be also some of the talks from Sony, WB, and Disney. Specifically from Disney, their investor meeting talks and their future plans of their content and their films and television and pretty much everything like that, as well as WB pushing out more DC films, which is going to be quite interesting as we discuss a bit more about that, and Sony developing more adaptations of their games. Again, they're really starting to pump out quite a lot more stuff from their studio, so we'll be discussing all of that in today's episode. So first up, Joe, 2020. It's been a rough year,
Yeah,
you know.
it's been a
So
rough year across the board, and of course, including for movies, because you had just so many films like either just going straight to streaming services, going to video on demand, or hell, just getting pushed to next year. But ironically enough, like I'm of course like a movie review geek, and I just happened to see like how many films that I reviewed that came out in 2020, and there was actually quite a lot. It was over 20, but of course, like with the rest of 2020, you had some real dumpster fires. So my number 5 worst film of 2020 is unfortunately the Impractical Jokers movie. Now, of course, this is a movie based on the iconic contemporary icon of a TV show, The Impractical Jokers. I absolutely love The Impractical Jokers. But unfortunately, I guess my expectations for it were just like a tiny bit high. Because
okay.
I mean, it's really sad because the film follows, the 4 Impractical Jokers getting invited to a party by Paula Abdul, but they only get 3 tickets, so they have to take a road trip to the party and compete in various Joker challenges to see who will get left out at the party. And here's the thing. The Joker challenges themselves are actually pretty great. Those are actually really funny. And the chemistry between all 4 of the guys and being friends is actually great. The problem is all the stuff in between the Joker challenges. And that might not sound like much, but believe it or not, that's a lot of movie that you have to get through in order to get to these Joker challenges. And it's bad. it's really, really bad.
Like, did it drag out, or because I haven't seen the movie?
It's just really cringy. So. It's just poorly,
Oh, that's
it
the
just
worst
felt very
kind.
forced. It felt very forced. I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, when you guys when the guys do their thing on their own, they're great together. Mm-hmm. But again, all these scripted segments, and again, I'm not saying that they can never do anything scripted in the future. It's just this, for whatever reason, was terrible. So I'm really glad that I had the AMC A-List program where I didn't have to pay a full $15 to $20 because I saw this in the city. But yeah, it was kind of rough, a little disappointing. While there were funny points here and there, it just it was a little disappointing. Again, I understand my expectations might have been just a tiny bit high, but what can I
okay, understandable.
I'm very demanding when it comes to any movie I watch. So.
It's completely understandable. And what are your other worst films of 2020?
I figured, you know what, I don't want to talk for too long, Darius. So, if anything, I think you should get your number 5 next.
Well, for me, one of my anticipated ones that I was pretty excited about, knowing that I am a comic book nerd and everything like that, was New Mutants. And at first, I didn't want to see it, mainly because of some certain comments the director made about race and casting. So I refused to see it. And then I finally caved in when I got it at home. Because I was like, it's how bad can it be? I heard it was bad, but how bad could it be? And oh my god, it is probably yet again another horrible X-Men film. And it's just like, this is the type of film where I was really stoked about because it was implementing supernatural elements into it, and we haven't seen that in a long time. like we have seen it in Doctor Strange, but again, Doctor Strange isn't not necessarily, it didn't go deep enough or really go to the horror elements, where with this one it really did. But even some of the horror elements felt very flat because they were trying to go more of a jump scare. A lot of things just weren't comic book accurate, and then on top of the director comments and just overall this film just it was horrendously bad, and I couldn't just like a part of me had to restart the film 3 times because I just didn't like it, and that's me with a good chunk of X-Men films. So this is definitely a movie I would not see again. Like
Yeah,
I
like
just
and it's really funny that you say this as your number 5 worst film because it's actually my number 4 worst film. So here's the thing, you know, crazy man that I am, crazy movie fanatic that I am. When the theaters in New York were closed, like I went to Connecticut to watch this because you know I was
okay.
itching to
Yeah.
get back into the movie theaters, and the closest theater I could find in Connecticut for AMC because I've still had the A list like a fool at that time was about 2.5 hours away. And here's the thing: the drive going there was really nice, but the
Hmm.
drive going there was better than the movie itself.
Oh man,
Like,
it's like I enjoyed the drive more than the movie.
yeah,
How's
like
that
what
possible?
the hell? And because like, and again, you know, I feel like it could have been really interesting. Like there was potential for the horror elements to stand out, but I guess we just didn't really get it. I think they marketed that us to in the wrong way. Like I was expecting much more horror film
Yeah,
than I got. Dialogue was pretty horrendous. The
it
performances and
was.
casting weren't bad overall, but the accents more than anything. My God, that was terrible. But
If there's
again,
anything I liked, is Anya Taylor Joy as Magic. That's
yeah,
it.
and that's about it. You had Charlie Heaton, the guy from
That's
Stranger
yeah.
Things. He had like an overdose of Kentucky. Honestly, what was that about? But even that,
Yeah.
you had the main character, which I didn't really feel much for. Like I understood her backstory, but I just couldn't grow attached to her. I couldn't really care about her. There's just something like very much lacking about
Hmm.
her. And the CGI was very distracting too. And you would think, since the movie that got delayed multiple times, like I remember seeing the trailer for this movie multiple times in theaters at least a year ago before it got delayed. And you would think that they would have had more time to work on all the problems with this movie, especially the CGI. Again, this is a huge
Exactly.
multi-million dollar big action flick. You think they would have taken more time to work on that, but I guess not. What do I know? So at the end of the day, this was really just not worth the delay or the trip to Connecticut. So, oh well.
Yeah, they delayed it multiple times. It was just a mess.
All right.
So
So you're number 4. What do you got?
my number for me, I mean, Mulan is also up there. Uh, again, I love Mulan. I love the animated film, but the live action one didn't work on multiple occasions, mainly because I thought the visual effects were bad. I thought just the only thing I liked was some of the cinematography, some of the shots. They looked nice. But other than that, the actress, I feel she was undervalued. She didn't. It was just. It wasn't good. And the fact that Disney put it on Disney Plus and you have to pay $30 for it just doesn't justify it even further. And I think that's really what. I think that's the main action they did that really also brought the value of the film down. Of
Yeah.
course, the film in general just wasn't that good, and they took things out from the adaptation that people loved. And it's like, come on, I,
And here's the thing, like
yikes,
you know,
another yikes.
if I felt like it could have been, I don't know, because I'm gonna be honest, I didn't watch it. And like here's the thing, I found out like okay, it's going to Disney Plus. Like all right. Then I found out about the $30 surcharge. I'm like, what the fuck? They can do that?
Yeah,
Like, what are they doing that for? And I'm like, nope, that's not worth it. And even then, now it's free for everybody. It's free for everybody, even if you don't have the Premier account on Disney Plus. And I
exactly.
still haven't
And I waited till it was free.
still haven't gotten around to watching. I don't know. I think I might rearrange my underwear drawer before I check
Ooh,
that one out. But yeah, that was sounds pretty rough, and I guess I'm not going to check it out. My number
oh yeah.
3, um, it feels a little unfortunate saying this because I honestly do love Adam Sandler, but I have to go with Hubie Halloween, and it's the
I knew
Adam Sandler.
once
Yeah,
you said Adam Sandler, I knew
yep,
you were gonna mention that one.
yep. Adam Sandler Netflix film where a relentlessly bullied man must protect his hometown from a mysterious force making people disappear on Halloween night. And of course, it's really sad because most Adam Sandler movies aren't masterpieces, but I even feel like this one fell
Yeah.
in comparison to the ones that aren't so well received. And here's the thing: I loved Grown Ups. Again, another one, not a masterpiece, but it's a guilty
Same.
pleasure. I had a much more fun time watching that one than I did Hubie Halloween. It's, of course,
Mm-hmm.
has a stat cast like most of Adam Sandler's films do, but it just felt like a bunch of familiar faces just coming together for Halloween. No one really gives a performance. They're really just there. Adam Sandler, of course, really changes things up as a man-child. He said sarcastically, and you have Julie Bowen playing his love interest, and I've never seen such a forced connection. And I thought my
Yeah, that
I thought my
connection.
luck in this
Oof.
field was bad. My God, but yeah, it was really. I didn't expect it to be a masterpiece, but I didn't expect it to be as cringy as it was. And like I said, it really is sad because I love Adam Sandler.
Yeah.
I think when you give him some really great material, he knocks it out of the park. But again,
Uncut
this is
gems.
one of his paid vacation films. This is the paid vacation
Yeah.
for him. All right. So
Exactly.
what do you got? What's next? Number 3.
For me, oh man, when my dad sees this and hears this, he's gonna get upset. Bad Boys for Life.
Oh Jesus! I didn't see that one. Why? Why?
I I don't know. Like, I like Will Smith. I like Martin Lawrence. I think they do great on screen. But for some reason, this film just it was underwhelming in a lot of areas for me. I mean, the action was definitely there. I mean, when I go see a Bad Boys movie, I'm there for the action. But even sometimes when I watch some of the action sequences, it's not that they were not believable. It was just, I don't know. It felt slow at some points, and I don't know. It just felt like your normal 2008, back then Bad Boys film, and I kind of expected more. I don't know. That's just a part of me. I kind of expected more, especially if this was going to be their last one. I don't know if it is, but I've heard that it was supposed to be. Who knows? But like, it just was very underwhelming for me. Like, at first I liked it, but then after seeing it, it was just, I don't know. I just wasn't a fan. Just wasn't a
That's
fan
that's
overall.
unfortunate. I mean, I don't have as much of an attachment to it because, surprise, surprise, I've never seen any of the other Bad Boys films. I know, crucify me later. Yeah, yeah, I know, I'm uncultured. So my number two worst movie of 2020 is a little indie film called Arkansas, and it follows two Arkansas drug dealers who are on the lookout for their lives after a deal gone wrong with their boss, and their boss, of course, is hunting them. And on top of that, they've never met their boss before, so they're basically being hunted by a man they've never met before. And this is one of the movies, like, very early on that skipped the theatrical release for video on demand thanks to COVID. But of course, it had a $5.99 rental price, which seems like peanuts compared to what they did for Mulan. And I'm gonna be honest, still wasn't worth the $5.99. This movie sucked. It could have been great. It really had
Wow.
potential to stand out because just alone for the Arkansas setting, it caught my interest. I'm like, oh, this doesn't take place in New York or New Jersey. This sort of crime mobster type film, but I didn't care about anyone or anything in this movie. There was really, like, it felt like there were no stakes whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
The guy Clark Duke, he directed. I think he helped write the script. He starred in the film. He basically did a bunch of things for this movie, and it felt like he bit off more than he could chew. This film had a very just low key approach that I feel like works in other films, but this just wasn't one of them. And I
Mm-hmm.
struggled to finish this one, and it's just under 2 hours
Oh,
long, which is really not good. That's it,
oh
yeah,
boy.
it was rough. It's rough, buddy. All right,
Yeah, I haven't seen that one either, but
don't
I mean, I
bother.
don't really watch a lot of indie films. I think I should. Um,
There's some great
I
indie
definitely
films
should.
that you could definitely appreciate for sure, but this wasn't one of
Yeah,
them. So I'm
exactly.
happy I took this bullet for you.
Well, now I know what not to see. For me, mine, as you didn't like Hubie Halloween, there's another movie called Coffee and Kareem on Netflix. It's It's with the guy that was in the office, and it was a new guy that came in. I forgot the Ed Ed Holmes
Ed Helms. Ed Helms.
Ed Helms, yes. And this one also kind of was like a lot of things were cheesy. The kid I thought was just I didn't like the kid at all because basically it's about these two guys. This son who I guess early point loses his father at some point, and his mom is dating a cop, and the cop is Caucasian, and so they get mixed up with a whole gang war, mainly because the kid was being stupid by saying, "Oh, he wants to have sex with my mom. Well, I'm gonna hire this drug dealer to do something to him." Let's just say it didn't work. Plan went askew, and just like the kid was so rude and disrespectful that I didn't care for him.
Hmm.
I mean, he was a good actor, like I give it to him, but like the movie, it felt like it should have had some more heart into it, but it didn't, and the jokes were kind of just lame or really just rude and disrespectful, and they tried to do it in a funny way that didn't come across it funny, if you get what I mean, you know. And so that was a disappointment of a movie because it's like I like Ed Helms, I like him, you know, I like some of his work before, but seeing him and then interacting with the kid and even implementing some race jokes, I don't know, it's just it didn't flow well for me.
Hmm.
So it's just that was a yeah. That, I don't know, that just wasn't like the comedy is really what like they really tried to make it that the comedy is gonna help elevate it, but I think honestly I think the comedy hindered it quite a lot.
Which
So
is kind of rough for a comedy movie. So yeah, I guess
exactly.
that's
So
minutes I
that
won't
was
be
also
spending
another.
on Netflix. All right, so my number one stinker for 2020 is the one and only adaptation of Artemis Fowl, and it's based on the
Okay,
novel
so
by
I don't have to say it because it's ours too.
Yeah, it's garbage. It's really just terrible. The intelligent son
Yeah.
of a criminal mastermind is drawn into a fantastical underworld and must find his missing father. One of the things, one of the biggest warning flags that I had for this one was that again, I don't know if you remember like how big the books were, but the books were pretty
I
big,
remember.
and they crammed it into a 95-minute film. Uh,
Yeah, I don't.
what kind of bullshit is that? And it showed just how the character just transitions in particular really suffered. Like they should have had more time for character development, but there were just certain things that just kept changing with each character, and it just felt very jarring. If it didn't feel earned, and
Mm-hmm.
on top of that, the acting across the board was pretty wooden, especially the kid who plays Artemis
Yeah.
Fowl. And I know what people are thinking, like, oh, he's not going to rip apart a juvenile performance, is he? Yeah, he is. Because I'm old enough to remember the three lead juvenile performances from Jojo Rabbit that last year. They were absolutely fantastic. I'm old enough to remember Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense. He was fantastic. Even going far back as the 70s, when child acting was really something to be left to be desired.
Yeah.
Justin Henry and Kramer versus Kramer, the youngest Oscar nominee in history. Incredible performance. This kid was terrible. He was absolutely terrible. The only person in the
Even with what he was given, he wasn't good.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's just he just I don't know what happened with that movie. That movie was out of all the films I mentioned, Artemis Fowl is definitely number one. Like that's
yeah.
just like
The
Android
entire
for
movie
Life. I
feels
could
like
yeah
the entire movie feels like it was just shot out of a computer. It was again, it's another movie with very distracting CGI. Editing was very choppy. Action sequences were very clumsy, and even then, the rest of the cast too. Josh Gad is mildly amusing at times, but most of the time he's just very annoying. So,
he was annoying all the way through for me, and I like Frozen and the Little Snowman. So
so yeah, that was the worst of what 2020 cinema had to offer. And again, like you wouldn't think it would be much, but wow,
yeah,
2020 surprising us yet again. All right, so
like
Darius,
yikes.
what's up next, my guy?
Yes, well, next is going to be a little thing about Sony. So, a bit more information about me, and of course, I like video games. I like video game adaptations, and I want it to be done well. Right now, the number one spot for that is Sonic.
Yep.
And number two is Detective Pikachu, and that says a lot in my opinion. So, as a gamer and someone who loves the PlayStation games and everything, hearing that Sony is developing more adaptations, like they said basically 7 more movies and 3 more shows, I think that is fantastic. PlayStation has a bunch of video games that are tailored to self identity sometimes and even self discovery and even rage issues. So like one of my favorite games on PlayStation, especially from this past generation, has been God of War. God of War basically covers this man from Egypt, from Greece, and the Greek mythology and everything, and how he basically, after the third game, he basically kind of goes on. He's basically a nomad. He goes up to the Viking area, and now we're introduced to Norse mythology. He has a son now, and he's raising his new son, and he's trying to control his anger. So the first movie that I can think of that will be beautiful on the big screen is God of War.
And
Because
that's a movie too.
just,
That's a movie too. And again, I've only watched my brother play God of War every now and then, but I do know like the general idea and the general feel of it. And I
mhm.
know a lot of video game films tend to go for like this. How do I put this? Like this big Hollywood tent type feel.
Yeah,
Sometimes there's like a B movie feel to them. I feel like God of War could be one of those films that, or one of those video game adaptations that can actually be taken somewhat seriously. And I'm wondering if
yes,
with the potential for a God of War film, or even with the success with Sonic the Hedgehog and the Detective Pikachu movies, is there a changing tide in video game adaptations as a whole? Because those are actually pretty solid. They had their flaws, don't get me wrong, but they were actually pretty solid.
of course. I mean, like the whole notion of video game adaptations has always been negative because not a single one has really been any good, and
Mhm.
you know, even one of the most like they've never really been good or really standard up to what some gamers expected. And when you do an adaptation, you should really look at it from its heart, and see what makes that franchise unique. And so I think Sony's in an interesting position where if they really take their time with these adaptations, I mean, right now, one of the biggest PlayStation games is getting a series, and that's Last of Us. They're officially going forward with it. The creator, even though people love or hate him, is a part of it. And so I think, and that's going to be an HBO limited series, which I think works very well for The Last of Us, as that is a self-contained story about relationship, and even though you have the apocalypse around them, it's all about these two and their relationship, their connection. So I think that being a HBO limited series is great. And so when I think about PlayStation and what adaptations they can do in the future, another like they have so much IP that they can interpret. It's just now I hope they take the time to do it well, and I think that's really going to be the big thing going forward. Like if they can create hit after hit out of these adaptations, that's going to a lot, and I think that's going to hopefully change just how other people, even Microsoft, when they do their Halo series, even though that's been in development for like 8 years now or whatever, to see how they approach it, because it's all about cherishing these characters, and it's all about doing them right. And if you don't understand it, have someone who does, be a consultant or something like that. Because at the end of the day, like you're dealing with people who love these franchises and love these characters with so much passion. You see it in the Star Wars community, you see it in every other community, really, Spider Man, whatever. So I think with video game adaptations, Sony's in a unique place and position to make really good series that deal with the stuff that us PlayStation fans and even filmmakers in general, when you think about narrative and think about character development, Sony has a lot of that in their pipeline, especially on the PlayStation side of things. So I
And
think
it's
they can do
interesting too.
something really great.
And it's interesting too. Like the way I see this, and again, like there may be like some kind of changing tide when it comes to video game films. Like it kind of feels reminiscent of what happened with comic book films because I feel like within the last like couple of decades they weren't taken as seriously because they didn't earn the right to be taken as seriously. But now, with especially with the Marvel Cinematic Universe films, especially with the Dark Knight trilogy, like they've earned that prestige to an extent. And
Yep.
maybe the same thing could happen with video game films. Even though my outlook on video game films as a whole is still very negative, maybe I'm
No,
wrong.
yeah, same here.
There's
So
potential for some change.
exactly, like, and again, I think Sonic and Detective Pikachu really put themselves in that position where it's like, this is how you do it. This is how you do it right. And I think one of the big things, especially specifically with Sonic the Hedgehog, that I think stood out with that film was the fact that they literally postponed the movie to redo the design of Sonic.
Yes, yes,
Like, and the fact that the director comes out and says this, he's saying sorry and is like, hey, you know what? We'll fix this. We'll delay it just for the because I'll be honest, if Sonic the Hedgehog did not get that redesign, that
that would have
film
sank.
wouldn't have been as good.
It would have sank. It would have been very distracting because that thing was fucking terrifying to look at. Like
Exactly.
even with the all the other things that Sonic the Hedgehog the movie actually had going for it, which is still stunning to this day, that design really would have tanked it. Because again, this
Exactly.
film is a visual medium at the end of the day, and if we had to look at that for an hour and a half, 2 hours, then
Especially little kids. Oh boy.
rough.
Exactly. So it's like, I think that movie and even Detective Pikachu to a certain extent really put a staple of like, this is how you do an adaptation with heart. Like one of the things I love about Detective Pikachu was his world building.
Mm-hmm.
Like you got a sense almost immediately the type of world, like what a Pokemon world would look like and feel like with the variety of Pokemon, how the city is connected to the suburbs with the train, very reminiscent of the game as well. So I just thought, from a world building point of view with Detective Pikachu, that was done spectacularly. We saw the layer, we saw the skin, essentially the city, the vibrancy, and then we see the underground layer with the Pokemon battles. Like I just thought that was great. So with Sony developing even more from PlayStation, because last year, if not 2 years ago, PlayStation did announce PlayStation Films or PlayStation Studios, which will be handling adaptations. So I'm wondering, is it going to be them or is it going to be Sony Pictures, or is it going to be a combination of both? So that's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, and it's funny too because Sony is in a very unique position to go about this sort of thing because not only is Sony a major film production company, they also make a lot of video games too. So it'll be interesting to see like the kind of integration that they'll be implementing in order to make this work. Because like no matter what, at least with the first couple of films, I think they're going to be making a lot of money because that's just my gut feeling. I feel like there's always going to be some kind of interest to see it. But and again, who knows? As far as everything with the pandemic, how much people are going to want to see it, or what kind of streaming services they're going to maybe just put it on instead. Who knows? But I do think there's going to be some buzz, at least going into this. But we'll see what happens. And I hope everyone has been staying with us for the last couple of topics. We will get to the top 5 films of 2020 for each of us. I hope that you guys have gotten a chance to subscribe, give this video a like, and hit the bell to get all notifications on the basically anything that we say and do. And, don't forget
everything we put out.
Yeah, exactly. Everything that we put out. Thank you for articulating that better than I did. And don't forget to give our social media pages a follow. And also check us out on Apple and Spotify podcasts. We're doing our best to make ourselves more available. And with that note, before we get to the high notes of 2020 cinema, because there actually was some, Warner Brothers made a lot of noise, didn't they, Darius?
Oh yeah, pretty recently, and this actually has me pretty excited and also pretty worried. And I'll get to why the worried part, mainly because what WB is doing, what they recently announced, is that they're going to be pushing more DC films. They're going to be pushing more, I think like 5 movies a year, 3 series on HBO Max, which is insane to even think about. They haven't talked about CW. That's his own thing. Specifically HBO Max and just DC films in general. So hearing that they're trying to push about like what was it? Four films in theaters every year and 2 exclusives to HBO Max with television spinoffs. It's pretty insane because right now we already know the Suicide Squad is supposed to be coming out this year, and they already announced a spinoff for that series, for that movie. Same thing with The Batman. They announced GCPD with Matt Reeves helming that series. And with the Suicide Squad one, it's Peacemaker with John Cena is basically getting his own series with James Gunn. Like, when you think about it...
Are you going to be able to see John Cena, though?
Yeah, it's going to be his series. Which is going to be, like... That's interesting.
I thought you couldn't
because...
see it, but okay.
But like again, like right now, DC they're in a interesting position mainly because they're trying to rebrand the DCEU. They're trying to rebrand what DC films are all about and everything like that. So for them to start pushing more out, and what gets me questioning this is, okay, we've heard rumors before, or really one of my highly anticipated DC films that's officially announced and has a producer is one of my favorite comic book heroes of all time, and that's Static Shock. He's actually getting a film, and I was super stoked about this, but now I'm worried, mainly because are they going to treat this as a theatrical movie or a movie for HBO Max? And you get what I mean? That I think it's going to be like 2 different perspectives of that, because when people think of a streaming movie, typically sometimes, not all the time,
they think smaller.
It's not that great in quality sometimes. You know, there's a lot of things lacking and missing. And I feel that Static Shock might be one of those films for some reason, mainly because it's going to be a lower budget. From what I've heard, it's not going to be like $100 million or $200 million film or anything like that. It's going to be more of a, lower budget, down to earth type of movie, which I'm fine with that. Static Shock, that character, his world is meant to be a bit more grounded, really, with still some of the spectacles of his electricity and electromagnetic abilities. And the fact that they have Michael B. Jordan as a producer is also great. So, and the fact that, okay, you want to push out more stuff for HBO Max. I understand that. But at what point do you now sort of start pushing stuff out more on quantity and less on quality? And that's what I'm afraid for DC films.
That's where I think we're heading with a lot of these, whether it's DC, whether it's Marvel, which of course we'll be talking to. But like my biggest concern is that, like, okay, is the quality going to be able to keep up with the quantity? Are we getting too saturated with all of these comic book adaptations that A, they're drowning out other types of films, and B, that we're just not going to be able to appreciate them as much?
Exactly, and that's going to be one of the things I'm worried about, especially with DC films. I'm a big DC fan, as a lot of my friends know, and even viewers right now. I'm a big DC fan in general. And so when I hear about these adaptations and they're pushing out more, as much as I am excited, because I'm more worried basically on the quality level side of things, as you said, Joe, because these are characters that are beloved and cherished for so many years, that like, okay, are they pushing it out mainly because right now HBO Max, they don't have a lot. They don't have a lot going for them. They have a few series that are pretty good. Like I've recently watched The Flight Attendant. I really like that. I thought that was pretty cool, actually. And so I'm just mainly worried on the quality level side of things. Like if they start doing a Batgirl movie or show or whatever. But then the more I think about it, the more I get even more excited, because it's like, okay, for example, let's say they do a Batgirl show, right? Okay, you can do a spin-off with a Birds of Prey series that is hopefully more comic accurate than a movie. But also, and that's the other thing, DC is essentially trying to just put as much as they can out there. They're just like, hey, we're just going to make a bunch of films.
Which makes me think, like, wouldn't you want to pace yourself out a bit more? So you don't burn yourself out too quickly? Because, like, here's the thing. There's a lot of these sort of comic book stories out there. I find out about what feels like new ones all the time. Because, again, I've never really gotten into comic books. So I feel like I'm finding out about different things every other day. But it just makes me think, like, you're going to run out at some point. Wouldn't you want to, again, space yourselves out even more? Like, the way they're going about this is the way it kind of reminds me of Apple in a way. Like, they come out with a new phone, like, every single year with, like, kind of minor change. Don't you want to pace yourself a bit more? I thought, exactly. Maybe it's just me.
They're rushing
I could understand,
yet again.
I could understand the world of movies and the business being about, like, oh, you got to get there first. You got to get there first. But at the same time, too, like, there has to be, like, some kind of, like, long distance run that you got to think about as well. You got to be thinking about the future, or at least not just the short-term future. So.
I mean, like, DC, again, and we talked about this, they're kind of rebranding. And I think they're one of the big aspects of DC Comics and everything that a lot of people like to a certain extent is the multiverse. And the idea of just, hey, every world has its own story and that sort of thing. You can get attached to any single one of them, right? And it doesn't matter. They're not trying to make a consistent narrative like the MCU, for example, where the MCU is more straight line, more streamlined. This is our universe. DC is like, hey,
definitely all connected. Like, they're very much connected in a way. They're connected more directly than what they're trying to do with the DC films, at least to my knowledge.
Exactly. That's what it really seems like that they could. I'm not saying it is a multiverse. I'm just saying that idea. I mean, Joker kind of set the pavement for that, really, because it's not part of the DC EU canon. It's his own separate thing. And it was, in my opinion, a phenomenal movie.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. And so, for this, if I think about it even more, it's like, okay, they can do wonderful stuff with it, but then at the same time, I think you've already established an audience and a target demographic that wanted a DC MCU sort of thing, so they might get confused. And I think that's really where I think even more confusion is going to happen, because it's like they're not only are they trying to rebrand themselves, they're not doing a good job at it. Like, they're just not. Like, they're still in this, people are still calling it the DCEU. And it's like, okay, if you want to continue that, fine. But now, why are you doing two separate universes or multiple, let's say, franchises that aren't connected? People are either going to tune out or just not care.
They're boxing their own plastic surgery, basically.
Exactly. I mean, as much as I'm excited, I am worried, mainly on quality. And especially knowing that one of my favorite comic book characters is getting a film adaptation. And I feel that his story in his world should be on the big screen, should be in theaters. I feel that his film might be an HBO Max thing with this announcement. So, and considering HBO Max doesn't have a lot of subscribers, we'll see.
We'll see what happens. And I'm curious as to what you guys are thinking. And again, don't be shy about exactly what your thoughts are on the future of the DC Universe. And again, don't be shy about your thoughts on Sony as well. Don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comment section below. We really want to hear and read exactly what it is that you guys think about everything that we're talking about. So I guess moving to somewhat more of a positive note, before we get into our top films of 2020, Disney had a big day a couple weeks ago.
Oh yeah, very big day and very exciting day in my opinion. Before I get into some of the nitty gritty stuff, really, with this announcement and what they've talked about, they're leaning heavily on the streaming side of things. Like, that's just a fact. They're leaning very heavily, and they're relying on older content to support Disney Plus even further by doing spin-offs and everything, and series and everything like that. Which, I mean, I'm pumped for it. I mean, Moana series, let's go. Okay.
That's going to be interesting. Zootopia, I'm curious to see exactly the direction that all these go in. And again, my biggest concern is that, like, are they stretching out the older content too much by doing this. Again, we'll see what happens, like, what
Hmm.
they're able to whip up. But as far as like stuff that's not necessarily old, I found out that Raya, I think it's Raya and the Last Dragon, the next Disney animated
Yes.
film, is actually doing somewhat of what Warner Brothers is doing. They're going to release that in theaters on March 5th, but they're also going to release that on Disney Plus if you have the premiere. And I'm curious as to
Yeah.
if that's going to play out differently since they're releasing it both in theaters. Like, is the box office are the box office returns going to be stronger than they were for Wonder Woman's? Because Wonder Woman 1984, because they released that both on HBO Max and in theaters the same day. But like anyone who has HBO Max, like there's no like premium account that you would
There
have
isn't.
to sign up
Yeah,
for in order to
exactly. I
watch.
think that's really what it's going to come down to too. Is it's going to be the price. When at the end of the day, people are going to ask how much is it, And considering from Mulan that was $30, and let's say Raya is onto Premiere, is it still going to be 30 or is it going to be more? So now it's like, okay, do I pay $30 for this,
Or do I go see it in the
or do I
theater?
pay 15 in the theater?
Am I willing to go to the theater for this? And honestly, I know for a fact that, I've fully gotten back into the idea of going back to the theater. I'm trying to do my little part to keep the industry alive. Don't know how successful I'm going to be, but I am curious as to how well Ryan the Last Dragon does. I think the film does look very interesting, but again, we'll see as far as that one. March 5th, and I can't wait to talk about it on the show. Even then,
Oh
outside
yeah,
of that, one of the other announcements that was kind of obscure that I found out about was the live action animation hybrid of Chip and Dale. Now, I
yeah,
remember seeing that vaguely when I was younger, and I thought to myself, like, oh, okay, that seems a little weird. But then I found out the voice actors behind who's going to be Chip and Dale, John Mulaney and Andy Samberg. That I think is going to be interesting. I want to see exactly how that goes. Again, this is not coming from someone who's the biggest Chip and Dale fan in the world. I didn't necessarily grow up with the cartoon like I know a lot of other people did. But seeing
hmm
those two work together, or at least hearing those two work together, but I'm curious to see exactly how that goes. I think that's going to be very interesting. I think it's going to be funny.
yeah. I mean, they've made a lot of obscure announcements. I mean, Mighty Ducks getting this hybrid animated live action, adaptation, which is like Mighty Ducks. Like, oh, okay, you're bringing it back, but again, I think
Who
Disney just
asked?
has a lot of
Who asked?
what
Who asked for it?
exactly, like who asked for it, but I mean, they have. I mean, after the recent acquisition with Fox and everything, they have even so much more.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that I think both sides, both Disney and WB, are going to struggle with quality because I remember watching that announcement, and Bob Iger basically said that, oh, we're really focused on trying to make quality content. But you have a lot of stuff going for you right now, and a lot of
Like, are
stuff
you
in the
biting off more than you
works.
can chew? And again, like, I hope
Yeah,
well for again just coming from the point of view of a content watcher, but I like again, is it expanding like Rome? Is it getting too big? Like, I don't know. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, I
It,
don't think
it,
anything can get too big. Like if I can
you
get
like to
more
think so.
films, go for it.
Well, you say go for it, but this brings you to my next point. There were a lot of announcements with the Pixar end of Disney, and of course, there was the
Yeah,
announcement of the origin story of Buzz Lightyear. I'm thinking to myself, all right, what the fuck? Then that came out of left field, and
yeah. That was out of
on
left.
top of that, they replaced Tim Allen with Chris Evans. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. What kind of bullshit is that? There's only one Buzz
that's
Lightyear in
BS.
this world, and that is Tim Allen. And again, just like the idea of like the original Buzz Lightyear. Okay, is that the first toy? Is that like the first,
Yeah,
Space
exactly.
Ranger of like the mythology that goes with the toy? I don't know. But I saw that I'm like, okay, this one may be one of the first Pixar films in a while that I feel like could possibly tank. I don't have a lot of confidence in this whatsoever. And again,
Yeah,
like I said, I'm very
I
much
don't
attached
either.
to Tim Allen as Buzz Lightyear. Again, what kind of bullshit is that? Does he not? Unless he just doesn't want to do it anymore. But I heard that he got dumped from the role. Again, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope that
Yeah, I want Lightyear to
I
be
don't know.
good, but it's like that just seems like an out of left field. Again, at this point, it feels like Disney's really trying to go, okay, what do we have in the back of our, content and everything? What can we do to increase, Disney Plus subscription and everything like that?
What can we
Considering
pull out of our ass, basically? That's what they're doing.
exactly, like when I saw the Big Hero 6 announcement, I was like, a second movie? Oh no, Baymax series. Like, come on.
Like,
Like,
what is this? Even going back to the Zootopia show, like I heard that like one of the things that they're really gonna be focusing on is like the sloth from the DMV. There, I'm like, okay, I didn't know he warranted his own entire backstory
yeah,
outside of what we got in the movie. Maybe I'm wrong. I certainly hope I'm wrong, but I'm not sure about that at the moment.
yeah. As far as Pixar and even their, Disney live action films and everything, I'm underwhelmed by that. But I am excited with somewhat excited about the Marvel and Lucasfilm side of things because they've made quite a lot of announcements that some of them I am worried because it feels too Disney-esque, such as the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special.
Yeah, I saw that on the list of like the article
Like,
that I read. The No Film School article that I read, I'm like, what the fuck? Is this going to be like the Star Wars holiday film special? That, again, I've never seen, but from what I understand was like panned across the board. So I'm curious as to
yeah,
how that goes. It feels a little, it feels a little like, out of left field too.
very out of left field. But another thing that I did like, even in general from Disney, is that they're trying to keep these films in theaters.
Yes.
They want to keep it in there. I mean, it makes sense.
There's clearly a bigger emphasis on Disney Plus, but I'm seeing some kind of effort to at least get back into or at least try and keep the theater game alive, especially with Ryan the Last Dragon. But in terms of other Marvel stuff, and again, they've released the trailers for these within the last couple of weeks. Loki, I think, looks very interesting. WandaVision, I think, is going to be crazy. And
I'm excited for WandaVision.
Soldier, I don't remember seeing any kind of promotional material for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but all those are slated to come out next year. And I'm pretty optimistic with those. I'm definitely very optimistic with those.
Yeah, I'm definitely optimistic with those. I mean, they did announce, even I'm liking that now they're really trying to make the MCU and the television side of things really more connected with Teyonah Paris from WandaVision. Her character is going to be in Captain Marvel, which I think is great, even though she should have been the first Captain Marvel, but I digress. And then you have Ms. Marvel, who's getting her own series later this fall, and she's going to be in Captain Marvel too. So I really like that they're really trying to bring all of these different things together. And it looks like, from what I can tell, Loki might be connected to Ant-Man 3 in certain ways. And I say might be. So like, and even Nick Fury getting his own series with, the Skrulls doing the Secret Invasion storyline. It's going to be interesting, considering the.
I was gonna say, what do you think of She-Hulk?
Now, I was excited for She-Hulk. Now I'm not too sure because they're focusing on it being a comedy. And I don't understand how you can do that when She-Hulk is a lawyer. So, and it should be more of a drama thriller, in my opinion, She-Hulk. Maybe, of course, some comedy, because it's Marvel and it's the MCU. But focusing heavily on the comedy aspect of She-Hulk and that character, I feel that that's going to be underwhelming for me. I'm still excited with Mark Ruffalo being in it as Hulk. I am excited that Abomination is coming back because that's been forever. I've always liked him
as an actor. I like Tim Roth.
Oh yeah, I love Tim Roth. I thought he was great as Abomination. And so considering this, all these announcements and all these new series and films, I'm like, it's going to be interesting where they take it. I mean, Armor Wars, like War Machine's getting his own series essentially.
I feel like it's like Oprah, like you get your own series, you get your own origin story,
yeah,
you get
it
your own
feels like
series
that.
and everything. That's exactly how this feels. And again, this goes back to my original point with what I was saying with the DC films. Like, is this gonna be too much coming at us that we really don't appreciate everything that we're given?
Yeah, and because I will say this right now, some of my favorite comic book adaptations have been on the streaming side of things, and that's The Boys and uh, The Umbrella Academy,
Mm.
or really specifically The Boys. Like that's just such a hard hitting show that really deviated itself, and I just don't think WB and DC can really. I mean WB and Disney with Marvel can really deviate themselves from the uh identity that they've already established for each franchise. Like I think it's going to be really hard, especially for Marvel. Maybe not so WB because they're kind of lenient on doing R-rated stuff and doing more hard, R-rated content and mature content compared to Marvel. So it's going to be interesting to see how Marvel approaches even films after the 2022 and beyond. I mean, as much as I love Black Panther and T'Challa, hearing that they're not recasting is one, I'm happy about that, but also I'm also disappointed, mainly because I think T'Challa's story can still continue. I mean, yes, you can give it to Shuri. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, that sort of thing.
That's where my money is.
But
I think she's going to be the new like main Black Panther because
yeah, I'm
I look at what
speculating
happened,
that.
especially what happened with Chadwick Boseman, the kind of talent that he was, and basically the kind of following that he had, especially following Black Panther. You can't replace that. You can't replace that.
You really can't.
I think to have anyone else in that role is like I think it's a middle finger to him, where he basically
Yeah.
can't do the role for stuff that's like outside of his control. It was kind of tragic. But before we get to the top 20 films of, or excuse me, top 5 films of 2020, Star Wars, of course, again, just to cap off everything with Disney. Star
Yeah.
Wars, of course, again, is following suit with everything going on with Marvel as far as like Pixar and regular Disney. Um, the Obi
But
Wan
this is
Kenobi
much
series.
smaller. It's much smaller compared to the other stuff,
Mm,
which I was surprised because I know Star Wars is in a very mixed place right now after Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. And so hearing like I don't mind them focusing on streaming. I do wish there's still more movies coming out of it. Like they announced Taika Waititi is doing a Star Wars movie,
that should
which
be
is
interesting.
great.
I want to see that. I
And
love Taika Waititi. Love that guy.
yeah, I think he can bring a good, really good sense of humor and even drama to the Star Wars mythos as well, even further.
Because look at what he did with the
And just
last episode or a couple episodes of the first season, I believe, of The Mandalorian. He
yeah,
did a great job with them.
he did great on Mandalorian. He did absolutely great. And so, hearing that he's going to be doing his own movie, and Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are upping up their content with the Ahsoka series. So Ahsoka, one of my favorite Star Wars characters, getting her own series, played by an actress I wanted her to play, is awesome. Ahsoka, like, is going to be Rosario Dawson, and I think that's going to be a series that a lot of people are not only going to pay attention to, but also I think is going to change Star Wars in ways that we didn't expect, mainly because of a certain story element that's been established in an animated show previously. The Acolyte I find to be really intriguing, which is supposed to be this mystery thriller on the dark side of things in Star Wars. Worried about that one though too because Kathleen Kennedy has a hand in that one. But
Yikes!
um,
And like the thing, like I saw I saw like the list of like the Star Wars content announcements, and I recognized Obi Wan Kenobi. I recognized Ahsoka, and I think that's pretty much. Oh, and the Lando Calrissian show. Everything else was foreign to me. Everything else, like I looked at, it, I'm like, I've never heard of any of this, and I don't know.
yeah,
I
some
have
of it
no
is new.
expectations for this whatsoever. Because again, like I
Yeah,
really only watched like the main Star Wars films. I watched Rogue One, wasn't crazy about it. Watched Solo, wasn't crazy about it. And I also watched, of course, I watched Mandalorian, great show. But and I also started
exactly.
watching like the animated series, The Clone Wars. I only recently started watching that, so like I guess, gauge into Star Wars isn't as deep as I would have originally thought because there are people who've watched
Yeah,
all this other content much more than I have. And just when you think you know everything, right? There's always someone who you know
yeah.
Told you.
I mean, it's going to be interesting because one of the animated stuff is really a spin-off off of Clone Wars,
Mm-hmm.
especially the last season when you get up to there. I'm not going to spoil it. Um, amazing season. But also even Patty Jenkins getting her own movie as well, doing the
Yes,
Rogue movie,
Rogue
which is
Squadron. That should be
yes,
interesting.
which I am excited about. But we'll see if she even keeps that Star Wars movie after Wonder Woman. I mean, we'll see.
I mean,
You
like,
know,
I don't see them dumping Patty Jenkins. Honestly,
yeah, I don't think so either. But just after the recession of Wonder Woman, like, I mean, Disney. Actually, no, they'll keep her. Disney's not, Star Wars not doing so well. So, um, but yeah, I mean, I think Star Wars, Lucasfilm, they have a lot going. They're definitely trying to do more. You can tell that they are changing a lot of things. Even after Mandalorian, they announced another show, the Book of Boba
yeah,
Fett,
and
which
what a way
is
to announce it too.
yes,
great stuff.
as a Boba Fett fan, yes. And so, like, even that announcement, I think, is just amazing. And I'm speculating they're going MCU like. I'm speculating they're going to lead into a big bad. And me and I've seen a lot of other Star Wars channels and people were all speculating the same thing, as well as the possible villain that could be this big bad, which has me excited because now you're bringing in more animated characters into live action form,
Mm-hmm.
and even more questions. Even after the season 2 finale of Mandalorian, more questions are opening up. With
Keeping more suspense. You're basically throwing more suspense out there. Like, okay, there's stuff that I knew before. There's stuff that got Natasha before. Oh, what are they going to do with it now? What are they going to do with it now in this new medium? So I think that's
exactly,
something that's going to really capture a lot of interest for sure.
yeah, I think Star Wars is in a definitely after Mandalorian season 2 finale. A lot of people really connected to that finale, especially with what happened. Um, I don't want to say anything, mainly because if you haven't seen it, go see it.
Of course, that is great.
Um, oh yeah, like if you're a big Star Wars fan, you're gonna like this episode. Um, especially with a certain reveal. So like I think that episode and really Mandalorian really brought some fans back together, and they're really like, okay, we see what Star Wars is doing. We see what Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are doing. They really care. We'll see where it goes. We'll see where it goes. A lot of this, really, all the stuff that we were talking about is we'll see where it goes. But when you look at the track record of all of these things, from video game adaptations to Marvel, WB, Lucasfilm, you
It's a
can kind
gamble.
of see the writing on the wall, but you're still not sure.
Yep. It's a gamble either way, for sure. And all right,
Exactly.
before we cap off the show with managing to find some good points in 2020, again, don't forget to give this podcast a like, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell to get all notifications, follow our social media profiles that are in the description below. Check us out on all of the podcasting platforms that we're on, all two of them, Apple and Spotify. And again, we're going to be expanding that in the not so distant future as well. And all right, let's just get right to it. 2020, we again, as much of a dumpster fire this year was, especially for movies, we actually managed
Yeah.
to find some gems. And I think, did I lead off the worst films?
Yeah.
Mine first. So you know what, Darius, why don't you lead off this one?
Should I start with my number 1 or number 5?
Actually, start off with your honorable mentions.
Honorable mentions, which are really 2, to be honest. Actually, 1, and that's going to be Love and Monsters on Netflix.
Love and Monsters. Okay.
I thought it had what?
I don't remember hearing of it.
This was a film that it was a hidden movie. I mean, like it to me, it was sort of a sneak attack, where it just came in, and then not a lot of people talked about, which I think is unfortunate. I really like this film. It basically you had Dylan O'Brien as one of the main characters, and who's from the Maze Runner. If you remember Maze Runner, the main actor, he's in this one. And so you're in this post-apocalyptic world, and he's trying to get back with his girlfriend. and it's that sort of mission. And you have um the actor that played Yondu is also in the movie, and he was fantastic.
Michael
As
Rooker, I believe.
Yeah, Michael Rooker, he basically helped this kid on the journey of being with his girlfriend, but also toughening the kid up. You know, he's not a tough kid. He's the type of person who'll stay in the kitchen, cook the food, and still stay in the kitchen, even when the fight goes out. That is a scene. It's great. Um, and so like this was the type of movie that to me had a lot of heart to it. You
Mm.
know, like we see him basically getting better at hunting, getting better at like killing and everything like that, and just a better survivor instead of just being so preserved. Some of it, he opens up a bit more, and we see what happened. So, and we see what happened to why he was the only person in his continent, essentially, that or in this area region that he was from that survived. So I just thought this was I liked it a lot. It had a good sense of humor, really good pacing. I thought the pacing was really well done because I watched it twice. I watched it once with my dad. We loved it. Watched it again with family. They loved it. You know, like it just had a lot of heart and emotion to it that I didn't expect from this movie at all. I honestly I had low expectations, really low, because it looked cheesy and cheap, but I was fine with it because even with some of the cringy elements and some of the cheesy moments, it felt uplifting because at the end of the day, this film thematically was about loving yourself, being who you are, but also taking risks and going out there,
Mm.
you know, and embracing the world and not being so confined. And I really like that on a thematically and even personal level because I know I've had issues with that. I know friends that had issues with that. So for me, Love and Monsters, I thought that was a really solid movie. Definitely up there, but that unfortunately has to be an honorable mention. So,
So, all right. So now, here's the thing. I have a few honorable mentions, but I don't want to go in depth with them. Just like I'm just gonna say, check them out. I hope you appreciated them. I like to uh, hear and read exactly what you guys that are watching and listening thought of these. So my honorable mentions are. Oh, and also too, before I get into the top five list, just a couple disclaimers. There are some movies from 2020 that I have not gotten a chance to see that I feel like could possibly make it into the top five, but I don't want to wait too long into
yeah.
2021 to do my top films of 2020. So these movies are, of course, Nomadland, One Night in Miami, which, if I'm not mistaken, we should be reviewing somewhat soon. Promising Young Woman, have not gotten a chance to go see it in the theater. Sylvie's Love just came on to Amazon Prime, have not gotten a chance to watch that one. And also Pieces of a Woman, which, if I'm not mistaken, Darius, that's in our itinerary for the
Yep.
next episode. So, again, you'll be hearing some thoughts as far as that one. And my honorable mentions are, of course, The King of Staten Island, Pete Davidson comedy, dramedy,
Still need to see that one.
Onward, the first Pixar film that came out this year, The Invisible Man, and Sound of Metal. And all right, so yeah, hope you guys check this out. Ironically enough, a couple of those came out in the beginning of the year, which usually movies that come out in the beginning of the year aren't the greatest, but you get some gems every now and
Yeah.
then come out in January.
I mean, I guess I can mention one more honorable mention for me, and that's Mortal Kombat Legends Scorpion's Revenge. It's an animated film, but they encompass what Mortal Kombat's all about, and that's important to me. So,
All right, so then your number five. Let's hear it.
my number 5 is Enola Holmes. And that was on
Okay.
Netflix. I really like this movie. I mean, Millie Bobby Brown, she's such a talented actress
Yep.
that, like, I'm always captivated by her and her performance because she's so good. And so I like the character that she played, and I liked her journey of her trying to find her mom, but she doesn't know everything, and you see the outer world is affecting her. Henry Cavill as Sherlock Holmes. Interesting choice, but I dig it.
Yeah, I thought he was really good too.
He was like he was really good in that role. Like I mean, I like Henry Cavill a lot. So, but I also liked him. I liked the preserved nature of Sherlock in general that they went with in this one. It definitely felt that they asked him to kind of be Witcher-esque from the show, where he basically, hey, act a bit more reserved, controlled, that sort of thing. But but you can tell his emotions still get the best of him sometimes, and I like that. I like Enola Holmes a lot. That's definitely my number 5.
All right, good. Good. Yeah, no, I actually liked it a lot more than I thought it would too. All right, so my number 5, ironically enough, another Netflix film was I'm Thinking of Ending Things. This is a very, very trippy, very weird movie. There's definitely a very
Ooh,
experimental feel for it,
I don't think
and
I've heard
it
that one.
follows, things take a turn for the worse, or really a turn for the strange when a young woman visits her boyfriend's parents as she's thinking of breaking up with him, as she's thinking of quote unquote ending things with him. And this movie was a
Oh,
giant puzzle from start to finish. It was just a giant metaphor, and it may be frustrating to try and piece it together. Honestly, I thought it was interesting to try and piece everything together, and the film actually becomes very intriguing once you figure out the metaphor and how it's basically just like another unconventional approach and display of the human condition from the one and only Charlie Kaufman. This is a guy who also did, he wrote Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Being John Malkovich. So to see this sort of thing come from him is not really so surprising, but at the same time doesn't necessarily feel the same as what he's done before. There are a
mm-hmm.
lot of long and meandering dialogues between a few of the characters, but they're actually very interesting, which is interesting because they go on for a very long time and they still manage to keep my interest.
Yeah.
Even then, too, like there are, of course, the four main characters, and there's really just some blistering tension that's made between all of them, which I absolutely loved. The movie is actually gorgeous to look at, and there's actually a great score with it too. And this is a movie that I feel like I needed to watch like more than once to like really appreciate it. And I think they made a smart move putting it on Netflix instead of putting it straight into the theaters, because this is something again you would need to watch more than once. And I feel like if a lot of people spent money on this one the first time they watched it, they would be really pissed. But they didn't.
Understandable.
Outside of course, the Netflix subscription. So I think again, this is something that you would have to watch more than once, but it was very much worth it. And again, of course, performances across the board from Jesse
Yeah.
Buckley, Jesse Plemons, David Thewlis, aka Remus Lupin from the Harry Potter series, and the one and only Toni Collette, the Scream Queen from Hereditary. They all give terrific, terrific performances. And yeah, that's my number 5. And check out I'm Thinking of Ending Things. If you're a more patient moviegoer, definitely check it out. But it's definitely not for everybody. If someone tells me like, "Oh, this movie's fucking stupid," be like, "Yeah, all right, I see where you're coming from." But I recommend it. I recommend it. So, all
Okay.
right, you're number 4.
My number 4 is Tenet. I love the movie, but it's definitely not my number 1. Because as I'm seeing my list, yeah, this is my number 4. I love Tenet. Christopher Nolan, I thought, did a fantastic job. Again, for me, this was very theme concept heavy, and
Mm-hmm.
I like those type of films. I like sci-fi. That he implemented sci-fi in a way not in a traditional way, and it's more of a loop sort of thing. And I just thought how he did it, and the score and the soundtrack I thought were amazing. Robert Pattinson was actually really good in this one, so I'm excited for Batman. Hopefully he does well. um, and John David Washington, he nailed it. He was, as much as he was called the protagonist, he felt like the protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
In a way that when you traditionally write scripts and everything like that, in the purpose of a protagonist, to me, it really felt like that. It really felt that he wasn't given a name for a reason, and he was called the protagonist for a reason. And everything about this, I just thought was really well executed. How he implemented certain sci-fi elements, I thought were great. How it to me it really felt fluid. And I remember watching it with one of my other friends, and I remember he told me that he was confused, and I was like, it can't be that confusing. I'm watching it, and I'm like, oh, it makes sense. He's like, you're not confused? I'm like, no. But he's like, man, how are you like this? I was like, I like sci-fi. What can I say? Like, it just made sense. There were certain moments that did throw me off, but I was fine with it because I just liked the concept that he was going for. And again, it's very theme and concept heavy, and if you're not into that, maybe you won't like it, which is understandable. I've seen a lot of people didn't like this movie in general. It's very mixed. But for me, I loved it. Definitely my number 4. Highly recommend it. If you like Christopher Nolan and his way of opening your mind and interpreting things, I think you're gonna like this one.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how I see it.
Yeah. Let's see. All right. So my number 4 is the one and only Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. This recently just came out on Netflix, and it follows
Ooh.
a musical recording session in Chicago in 1920 session. Tempers run high amongst the musicians involved as the one and only Ma Rainey, the blues icon, records a particular album. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that stood out to me about this movie that I didn't think would stand out to me about this movie is that it all takes place in not so many settings. It really centers around the recording studio, which I thought was interesting because it kind of gave me that feeling of 12 Angry Men, where they're basically just stranded or stuck in this courtroom for however long. And the tension that was really intoxicating in 12 Angry Men is, I felt similar with this film, how they're basically all like, they have their own problems with each other and they're basically just forced to collide with each other. And,
Mm-hmm.
this tension is further bolstered by the not only the characters, especially Ma Rainey and one particularly hot-headed and egotistical trumpet player named Levy, played by Viola Davis and Chadwick Boseman. That really sets the course for everything to explode and really fly off the handle. And of course, Viola Davis is fantastic, but Chadwick Boseman, this was his final performance.
His final film,
And
yeah.
I
I was just about to ask, is that the one with his final film? So
this is, to my knowledge, this is the one that was his final performance. And I got to say, what a way to go out. What a way to go out. He was sensational. Nothing ever felt like it's an explosive role, but it never feels overdone. Again, both roles, both Ma Rainey and Chadwick Boseman's role are explosive in a way, but they never feel like they're overdone once. They both disappear into their roles. I always identified them as the character that they were playing, as opposed to just the high-profile performers that they are. So they both have really knocked it out of the park. Chadwick Boseman, between this and the other war film that came out that he did this year, Da 5 Bloods, I'm confident he's getting at least one Oscar nomination, and I think he's going to win. That's just what my gut.
Really, all right.
Absolutely. And on top of that too, the production design, the costume design are all amazing, and the makeup that they had for Ma Rainey is just incredible. So, watch.
Yeah, I still need to see that one. I haven't seen it yet. So.
Yeah, highly recommend. It's great stuff.
And that's on Netflix. Like that was a Netflix original, right?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. So we're on number 4, or number 3 now. 3, right?
You're at 3.
Oh man, this is hard. Okay, so my number 3 will probably be Soul. Okay. I love Soul. Like the other 2, I'm kind of a sucker for that type of genre. But like for Soul, I still love Soul no matter what. As you guys saw with our Soul review previously, if you haven't, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date on all of our content. And when you check out our channel, you'll see our Soul review is right up there. So if you want to know my real honest opinions, just watch it. I don't need to say it here. Watch it. But yeah, Soul, just one of the best Pixar films for me. Absolutely loved it. Definitely my number 3 as of right now at this moment for 2020.
Got it. Yeah. Let's see. Number 3. It's funny that you mentioned Tenet somewhat recently because that's actually my number 3. And for
really,
those who aren't as familiar with what the film follows, it basically, this secret agent, this agent type guy, basically has to prevent World War III by manipulating the progression of time. And of course, just from the sound of that alone, that this is a Christopher Nolan film. And on his part, there were some issues that I had with the audio, but other than that,
in terms of I heard it too.
In terms of a technical filmmaking standpoint, or even just like the storytelling standpoint, with all of the heady concepts that this movie entails, this is a masterclass in execution. I thought this movie was near perfect filmmaking. Like I've never seen anything like this before. This is the second movie I saw in theaters after they started to open up, and that was another movie. Of course, I had to go all the way out to Connecticut for to watch, and I gotta say,
It was worth it.
2.5 hours to see that in IMAX was so worth it. From the visual standpoint, from the sound effects to the musical score, all of which just exploded off of the screen, off the surround sound. It was something that I'm not going to forget for a very long time. Particular action sequences and visuals, I'm not going to forget for a very, very long time. And yeah, don't leave your thinking cap at home when you watch this one. That's what I'm going to say. And even the performances across the board were pretty solid too. I thought Kenneth Branagh, honestly, I've heard some flack about him and his character. I thought he stole the show. I thought he was a terrific
He
villain.
was good. Yeah.
He was
I
menacing.
liked him, but then like I think certain elements of how he portrayed certain, I guess, dialogue kind of threw me off. So it's just like, that doesn't sound natural. But I was like, you know what? He served a purpose in the narrative. That's what's important.
Yeah, this movie like further reaffirms like the singular talent that Christopher Nolan is. Like, there's not another guy out there doing what he's doing. So props to him for really pulling this movie off.
Oh, my number 2. This is hard. Oh man, this is so hard. Okay, I'm just gonna do my 1 and 2. It's not in order. These are just my other 2 films I absolutely love from 2020, and that's The Invisible Man and Over the Moon on Netflix.
Okay, The Invisible Man I watched in theaters. Again, that was like a couple weeks before everything shut down. That was terrific. Never heard of Over the Moon.
Over the Moon is an animated film on Netflix where we follow a young girl basically trying to reignite the spark in her father to sort of move on, but she does it in a selfish way. So essentially she loses her mother at a young age. Visuals, very Pixar-esque. Music is phenomenal and uplifting. It's a movie I didn't expect to love as much as I did, because it felt Pixar-esque to the point where I cried.
Okay.
And I'm a pretty emotional person at some points. Like, Soul definitely had me cry. Into the Spider-Verse made me cry. How to Train Your Dragon trilogy made me cry. So like having this animated film that's not Pixar and a different studio that was so heartfelt. Some of the comedy, I guess, is a bit childish, because I mean, one of the heavy comedy aspects is from her, because basically her father's with another woman now, and she can't stand the sight of it. So they embrace the Chinese mythology. And like, hey, and again, I don't know much. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but like, she basically goes to the moon to try and find this lady that's like, hey, Dad, she does exist. Wait it out, or like, don't be with this person because I don't like her, or she's not like my mom. And I just thought they did it in such a way that was so emotional for me, because it deals with loss, it deals with grief, and one of the most beautiful aspects is really how the so-called antagonist isn't the antagonist. The antagonist is your grief, and I love that. I absolutely love that. And they really flipped it halfway that I didn't see coming. Like, I really did. From an animated film, I did not see certain things coming. And I see a lot of things coming in animated films. So what they did in the third act, and just the idea of grief and acceptance and moving on, knowing that you have a family, love is still there, cherishing as well, I thought was just done so well that I absolutely love this film. Like, I think that type of film that not a lot of people know about, and I definitely want people to know about this, because I thought it was great. It was great, had me cry. Good comedy in certain areas. Sometimes it was drawn out, but the visuals were just also on point.
Is it on Netflix by any chance?
It's on Netflix. It's a Netflix original animated film.
Got it.
Which I didn't expect a lot from it. So, but I absolutely loved it. So, like, even thinking about it kind of almost has me tearing up right now. So.
Wow. What? And you said the other one was The Invisible Man. Is there anything else that you wanted to elaborate?
Invisible Man. To me, just this thriller, high stake, bit of sci-fi, mainly because invisible suit. I mean, it's a suit that turns you invisible. Love it. So like everything about it, I was on the edge of my seat. Like I was, like it was to the point where even because I already try to look around me, whenever I walk out, I be observant. But I was even more observant after this because I was like, yo, this stuff is creepy. It is crazy scary. And even seeing the technical side of things and how they shot certain things, especially with him being invisible, the behind the scenes, I thought was great. The pacing I thought was really well for it to be a thriller for a reason. The tension was there all the way. It was creepy to the level of like I want to leave. I want to get out off my seat and go into the bathroom and just not continue watching this. I really loved Invisible Man. That is a movie I absolutely love from a thrilling standpoint, a tension standpoint, even music had me creeped out at certain, or really just drawn me in because I was just like, yo, I can't get up.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I tried to get up, I could not get up.
All right. Good. Yeah, no, I enjoyed it very much when I went to see it back in February. It was really, really solid. All right, so I guess I'm just going to do my last two consecutively.
I couldn't decide between those two.
All right, so my number two of 2020 is the Netflix film, of course, The Trial of the Chicago 7. This is a dramatization of the titular infamous court case where numerous Vietnam War protesters were charged with attempting to incite a riot at the 1968 Democratic National Convention. Now, the biggest thing that this movie had going for it was Aaron Sorkin. He's the writer-director of this film. He competently, of course, he's directing the film, but his script is the biggest thing that this movie has to offer, and this movie has a lot to offer. He's easily my favorite screenwriter working today. He's one of the best guys working in the game, and this
Aaron Sorkin, right?
Aaron Sorkin, correct. He also wrote the script.
Oh, you better take his masterclass.
I considered it. He also wrote the script for The Social Network, which is, again, one of the best scripts I've ever seen in a film. But and again, this script is no exception. And again, this film, of course, is very crisply edited. It really does, does a great job of seamlessly going back and forth, and I feel like that works harmoniously with the rapid fire dialogue, really the rapid fire dialogue and really monologues that Sorkin is known for writing. And even that this had a lot of characters. It had a lot of characters in this movie, but none of them ever felt underdone or undercooked, or it just felt like background noise or anything like that. And this had a great cast, and I think the standouts of all these characters and all these great performers were Eddie Redmayne and Yahya Abdul-Mateen, but also you had Sacha Baron Cohen.
Okay.
This is the perfect role for him. It's a perfect role of blend of drama and comedy that Sacha Baron Cohen really shines in when you put him up to the task. And again, this is a great blend of intelligence and humor and passion. There's a lot of those types of emotions that go into this sort of thing. And I think that with everything that's been going on over the last year, with all the social unrest that's been happening, I think there are lessons both sides of the political ideological aisle that they can both appreciate. So this movie, I thought it would be well done, but I wasn't sure if it would resonate with me as much as it did. And I'm very happy that I'm very happy that it did. And then, of course,
interesting.
My number one film of 2020 is Soul. And again, we have our review on our channel that, if you just take a look at us, again, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us to get notifications on all of our content. And if you look further into our channel, you will see our full-length review of Pixar's newest film. And again, this is about a jazz musician / high school, middle school teacher whose soul and body literally get separated from each other. And again, this is one of
absolutely brilliant.
This is one of Pixar's best. It proves that Pete Docter, the guy who helmed this film, is one of the brightest minds working at Pixar. From a storytelling standpoint, this feels like Pixar, but it doesn't feel like Pixar at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is very existential. this feels like new ground, but at the same time, still fits in very well with everything else that Pixar has done. Emotionally, it's all, of course, very satisfying. Again, even though it focuses more on the existential end of things, visually, animation is just absolutely pristine. I loved what they did with animating New York City, and the musical score is absolutely terrific. And I just love how they were willing to go in a more mature direction with a kids' film. I love it when Disney and Pixar does that because again, The Lion King is my favorite Disney movie of all time, and that was not afraid to go to that that darker and deeper place. And this movie again.
I wonder if that darker, deeper place will be in the Lion King prequel.
What'd you say?
I wonder if that darker, deeper themes of Lion King is going to be explored in the prequel.
They're doing a prequel? I thought it was just a sequel.
Oh yeah, part of the Disney investor meeting.
Great. Can't wait for them to butcher my childhood. It's gonna be great. But yeah, no. Soul, my number one film of 2020. Again, of course, there were a couple other films that I have not gotten around to seeing that could have possibly knocked it out. But again, I just didn't want to hold this off from you guys.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's pretty much everything that we got for today.
I have one more honorable mention for favorite movie.
Okay, go ahead.
Archive. It's on Amazon.
Okay.
It's interesting. It's a how do I say it without spoiling it? We go through life of a man that basically is trying to bring back his wife.
Okay.
That's all I'll say. It's really interesting. And it's sci-fi. So if you're into sci-fi, go watch it.
All right. Well, on that positive note, Darius, thank you for joining me here once again.
Of course.
Who's still watching. Hopefully, there's still a lot of you people there. Don't forget to give this video a like, channel a subscription, and hit the bell to get all the notifications for everything it is that we do. Follow our social media profiles. That should all be in the description below. Again, just to get more and more alerts, because why shouldn't you be even more up to date? And again, don't forget about the podcasting platforms that we're currently on, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We're trying to get on more, and as soon as we find out exactly where we are, you'll find out exactly where we are. So on that note, Darius, again, thank you very much. This has been Cinema Unchained.
Adios.